How far would you go to protect your unborn child when your engagement celebration becomes a federal crime scene? Hadley Thorne stood in the center of the ballroom, one hand resting protectively over the swell of her 5-month belly, the other gripping a champagne flute filled with sparkling cider. The baby kicked, hard, as if sensing what she already knew in her bones. Something was terribly wrong. The engagement party was perfect. Too perfect. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across 200 guests. The string quartet played Vivaldi with precision, and her fiancé, Adriano Bianchi, worked the room like the king he was. His tailored black suit hugged his frame. His smile was warm and calculated, and every handshake was a negotiation disguised as celebration. But Hadley wasn't watching Adriano. Her eyes were locked on a man near the terrace doors, a man who shouldn't exist in her new life, a man whose face she'd spent 3 years trying to forget. Derek Holloway, her ex-boyfriend, wearing a waiter's uniform that fit too snugly across his shoulders, carrying a tray of hors d'oeuvres he wasn't serving to anyone. His gaze found hers across the crowd, and the look in his eyes wasn't longing or regret. It was mission-focused determination. The baby kicked again, harder this time. Hadley's breath caught. She recognized that expression because she'd seen it before, back when Derek was still pretending to be a graduate student in criminal psychology, instead of what he really was, an FBI agent who'd used their entire relationship as cover for an operation that nearly destroyed her family's legitimate business ventures. Now he was here, at her engagement party, dressed as staff. Adriano appeared at her side, his hand sliding possessively around her waist. "You're pale, cara mia. The baby?" "The baby's fine," Hadley whispered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "But we have a problem." "Tell me." She didn't need to point. Adriano followed her line of sight, and she felt his entire body go rigid. He knew Derek's face from the files, from the background checks, from the late-night conversations where Hadley had confessed every detail of her past. "Hello, beautiful family. My daughter challenged me to hit 1,000 subscribers. So now you're all involved. Let's show her that nothing is impossible with a family behind you. Subscribe and comment below with where you're watching from. I want to know. Because seeing all your locations reminds me that stories connect us all, no matter the distance." "Let's continue." Adriano's jaw tightened, but his smile never faltered. To anyone watching, he simply looked like a man admiring his beautiful bride-to-be. "How many?" he asked quietly. Hadley scanned the room with practiced subtlety. 3 more suspicious waiters positioned at strategic exits. 2 bartenders who moved with military precision. A photographer whose camera lens pointed too often at Adriano instead of the guests. "At least 6 undercover," she murmured. "Maybe more outside." "This is a sting operation." "Yes." Adriano's fingers drummed once against her hip, a silent signal. Within seconds, 4 of his men shifted positions around the perimeter, casual but ready. The music continued. Guests laughed and danced. No one noticed the chess pieces moving into place. "They're here for me," Adriano said. "They think you're just the naive pregnant girlfriend who doesn't know what her fiancé really does." Hadley's hand tightened over her belly. The baby kicked again, and something fierce and primal rose in her chest. These people, Derek and his federal friends, had walked into her home, crashed her celebration, and threatened the future she was building. They'd turned her engagement party into a trap, using her pregnancy as cover because they assumed she was harmless. They had no idea who she really was, what she was capable of, what she'd done to survive before Adriano Bianchi ever walked into her life. "They made a mistake," Hadley said softly, her voice carrying an edge that made Adriano's eyes sharpen with recognition. "They should have done their homework." "Tesoro, your hormones." "My hormones are the least of their problems." Across the ballroom, Derek set down his tray and reached for his hip. Hadley saw the telltale bulge of a concealed weapon, the micro earpiece catching the light as he turned his head. He was receiving orders. The operation was moving into its next phase. She had maybe 3 minutes before this entire beautiful party turned into a federal arrest scene. 3 minutes before agents stormed in with warrants and weapons. 3 minutes before her unborn child's father was dragged away in handcuffs, unless she ended it first. Hadley straightened her shoulders, smoothed her burgundy silk dress over her belly, and smiled. Adriano, amore mio, do you trust me? His dark eyes searched hers. With my life. Good. Because I'm about to remind everyone why you fell in love with me in the first place. She handed him her cider glass and kissed his cheek. When I signal, get our people to the safe room, all of them. No matter what you see, no matter what I do, trust me. Hadley. But she was already moving through the crowd, her pregnant belly parting guests like a ship's bow cutting through water. Everyone smiled at her, congratulated her, touched her arm with affection. They saw a glowing mother-to-be, radiant and harmless. They didn't see the predator underneath. Derek's eyes widened as she walked straight toward him. He touched his earpiece, spoke quickly into his concealed mic. Backup was coming. But Hadley was already there, her smile warm and devastating. Derek, she said loud enough for nearby guests to hear. What a surprise. I didn't know you were working events now. His jaw clenched. Hadley, we need to talk. Do we? She tilted her head, one hand resting on her belly. Because it looks like you crashed my engagement party. That's a little awkward, don't you think? Derek's hand hovered near his concealed weapon, but he couldn't draw it. Not with 50 witnesses watching a pregnant woman smile at him like they were old friends. The operation was already compromised, and Hadley knew it. You need to step away from Bianchi, Derek said, through gritted teeth, his voice low. You don't know what he's involved in. Hadley laughed, a genuine bell-like sound that made nearby guests glance over with warm smiles. Oh, Derek, you always did think you knew what was best for me. She stepped closer, her belly nearly brushing against him. But you were wrong 3 years ago, and you're wrong now. His face flushed. I was protecting you. You were lying to me, using me, building a case against my father's company while pretending to love me. Her smile never wavered, but her green eyes turned glacial. Tell me, did the Bureau give you a bonus when I helped you access those files? When I vouched for you at family dinners? Derek flinched. Good. She wanted him off balance. Across the room, Adriano watched with the stillness of a panther. He'd built his empire on reading people, on knowing when to strike and when to wait. Right now, he was waiting because he understood something about Hadley that Derek never had. She wasn't a victim. She never had been. Hadley Thorne grew up in Boston's North End, the only daughter of a commercial real estate developer who walked the razor's edge between legitimate business and underworld connections. Her mother died when she was 12, leaving her to navigate a world of powerful men who underestimated her because of her delicate features and soft voice. She learned quickly, learned to listen at doors, to read financial documents her father left in his study, to understand that power wasn't about force. It was about information and timing. By 16, she was managing her father's books. By 20, she'd restructured his entire operation to withstand federal scrutiny. Then Derek Holloway had walked into her life during her master's program at Boston College. Charming, intelligent, attentive in ways that made her believe someone finally saw her as more than a strategic asset. For 18 months, she'd let herself be vulnerable. She'd shared family details, introduced him to her father's associates, believed in a future where she could be just a woman in love. The betrayal had nearly destroyed her, not because Derek was FBI, but because she'd been careless enough to trust him. She wouldn't make that mistake again. You're making a scene, Derek hissed, aware that more guests were glancing their way. His backup was supposed to be in position by now, but something had gone wrong. His earpiece crackled with confused voices. Am I? Hadley touched his arm gently, her voice carrying just enough to be overheard. I'm just saying hello to an old friend. Though I have to ask, how did you get hired as catering staff? Background checks are usually so thorough for events like this. Derek's eyes narrowed. What did you do? Me? I'm 5 months pregnant, Derek. What could I possibly do? She patted her belly. Though I have to say, Adriano's head of security is incredibly competent. He runs background checks on everyone who enters our home. Every vendor, every staff member, every guest. Her smile sharpened. Including the catering company the FBI set up 3 weeks ago as a front. The color drained from Derek's face. You thought you were so clever, Hadley continued softly. Infiltrating my engagement party, building a case, waiting for the perfect moment to arrest Adriano in front of everyone. Humiliate him. Destabilize his organization. Make me the sympathetic pregnant girlfriend who gets witness protection and a fresh start. That's not, but you forgot something important. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper only he could hear. I chose Adriano Bianchi. Not because I'm naive or controlled or desperate. I chose him because he's the only man who's ever been honest with me about who he is and what he does. Derek grabbed her wrist. He's a criminal, Hadley. He runs illegal operations across 3 states. And you're assaulting a pregnant woman at her own engagement party. Hadley's voice rose just enough. Let go of me. Every head in the vicinity turned. Adriano moved through the crowd like lightning, 3 of his men flanking him. But before they reached her, Hadley twisted her wrist using a technique she'd learned from Adriano's self-defense training, breaking Derek's grip and stepping back with her hands raised. I don't want any trouble, she said clearly, her voice shaking just enough to sound frightened. I don't know why you're here, but you need to leave. Derek realized his mistake too late. He was surrounded by guests, lawyers, businessmen, politicians, all of whom now saw an aggressive waiter grabbing a pregnant woman. His cover was blown, his operation was falling apart, and he had no legal grounds to make an arrest in front of witnesses. Adriano reached Hadley's side, his hand gentle on her shoulder, but his eyes deadly as they fixed on Derek. Is there a problem, Amore? This man grabbed me, Hadley said, her voice small and uncertain. A perfect performance. I was just being friendly, and I saw. Adriano's tone could have frozen fire. He looked at his head of security, a granite-faced man named Rocco Salvatore. Remove him, and find out how he bypassed our screening. Already done, boss. Rocco held up his phone, showing Derek's real FBI credentials. Found 5 more federals in the staff. They're currently locked in the wine cellar. Very secure, very soundproof. Derek's hand moved toward his weapon again, but 6 of Adriano's men had materialized around him, blocking him from the other guest's view. No guns drawn, no obvious threats, just large men in expensive suits, standing very, very close. You can't do this, Derek said, desperately. This is a federal operation. This is a private party, Adriano interrupted smoothly. And you're trespassing. I could call the police, but I think we both know that would be embarrassing for everyone involved. He smiled, cold and controlled. So here's what's going to happen. You and your friends are going to leave quietly, and in return, I won't press charges for assault against a pregnant woman, breaking and entering, or the various surveillance laws you violated tonight. Hadley watched Derek's face cycle through rage, frustration, and defeat. She almost felt sorry for him. Almost. This isn't over, Derek said. Oh, it is. Hadley stepped forward, her hand resting on her belly. Because here's what you don't understand, Derek. I'm not the girl you knew 3 years ago. I'm not someone who needs saving or protecting. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw the truth of who she really was. I'm the woman who's been running Adriano's financial operations for the past year. I'm the one who restructured his entire network to be audit-proof. I'm the reason you can't touch him. Derek stared at her, comprehension dawning like a nightmare. You're not a victim. You're his partner. No, Hadley corrected softly. I'm his equal. There's a difference. The baby kicked hard, as if agreeing. Hadley smiled, genuine this time, fierce and protective. Now get out of my house before I let my hormones make decisions we'll all regret. Derek didn't move. His jaw clenched, and Hadley saw the exact moment he decided to burn his entire operation rather than walk away empty-handed. He reached for his earpiece, spoke one word. Execute. The lights went out. Emergency backup generators kicked in 3 seconds later, bathing the ballroom in harsh white light. But 3 seconds was all it took. The terrace doors exploded inward. Not glass, but the sound of battering rams against reinforced wood. Federal agents in tactical gear poured through 4 entry points simultaneously, rifles raised, voices shouting commands that overlapped into chaos. FBI, nobody move. Hands where we can see them. Adriano Bianchi, you're under arrest. Hadley's hand instinctively covered her belly as guests screamed and scattered. Adriano's men reached for weapons, but he raised one hand. A command for restraint. Starting a gunfight with 200 civilians in the crossfire wasn't an option. and the FBI knew it. Smart. Derek had waited until Hadley forced his hand, then unleashed the full operation anyway. He was willing to sacrifice protocol, witness safety, and his own career to take down Adriano Bianchi tonight, which meant this wasn't just about arrests. This was personal. "Stand down," Derek shouted to Adriano's men, his own weapon now drawn and pointed at the ground. "We have warrants for Adriano Bianchi, Rocco Salvatore, and 12 other individuals present tonight. Cooperate, and nobody gets hurt." Adriano's expression remained calm, but Hadley felt the rage vibrating beneath his controlled exterior. He'd built his reputation on being untouchable, on operating in shadows the FBI couldn't penetrate. This public raid at his engagement party, in front of politicians and businessmen he'd cultivated for years, it was designed to humiliate him, to destroy him. "You have warrants," Adriano's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Show them." Derek nodded to another agent, who approached with documents, but before he could hand them over, Hadley stepped between them, her pregnant belly a physical barrier that made the armed agent freeze. "Let me see those," she said calmly. "Ma'am, step aside. I'm an attorney." The lie came smoothly, though it was only half false. She'd completed 2 years of law school before her father's business consumed her attention. "If you're arresting my fiancé, I have the right to examine the warrants for legitimacy." The agent looked at Derek, who nodded tersely. Hadley took the documents and scanned them with practiced speed. Her mind worked like a calculator, processing every line, every signature, every legal justification. And there, buried in the third warrant, she found it. "These are invalid," she announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "That's not your determination to make," Derek snapped. "Actually, it is." Hadley held up the document. This warrant for electronic surveillance was signed by Judge Patricia Whitmore on the 15th. But Judge Whitmore recused herself from all cases involving organized crime figures on the 12th. It was in the Federal Register 3 days before she signed this. She looked directly at Derek, which means any evidence gathered under this warrant is inadmissible, and any subsequent warrants based on that evidence are fruit of the poisonous tree. Silence fell across the ballroom. Even the tactical agents looked uncertain. Derek's face flushed red. "You're stalling. I'm stating facts. You built this entire operation on compromised warrants, which means you have no legal grounds to be here." Hadley's voice remained steady despite her racing heart. "And you know it, Derek. You rushed this raid because you were losing control of the operation. You let your personal vendetta override your professional judgment." One of the senior agents, a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, stepped forward. "Agent Holloway, is this true?" "It's a technicality." "It's the law," Hadley interrupted. She handed the documents to the female agent. "Special Agent Morrison, SAC Morrison." The woman took the warrants, her expression darkening as she read. "Jesus Christ, Holloway. We had probable cause. You had contaminated evidence." Morrison's voice was ice. She looked at Adriano, then at the armed agents surrounding 200 terrified civilians. "Stand down, all units, stand down." "Ma'am, we can't just—" "We can and we will." Morrison's jaw tightened. "Before this becomes a lawsuit that costs the Bureau millions and ends all our careers." She turned to Adriano with professional courtesy. "Mr. Bianchi, I apologize for this disruption. We'll be leaving immediately." But Derek wasn't done. "She's lying. She's manipulating you. Agent Holloway, you're suspended pending investigation." Morrison's tone brooked no argument. "Effective immediately. Gun and badge. Now." Hadley watched Derek's world collapse in real time. His face cycled through disbelief, rage, and desperation. He'd gambled everything on this raid. His career, his reputation, his obsession with taking down the man who'd won the woman Derek thought he'd owned. And he'd lost. "This is because of her," Derek said, pointing at Hadley. "She's got you all fooled, just like she fooled me. She's not innocent. She's running his entire operation." "That's enough," Morrison said sharply. But Derek lunged forward, trying to reach Hadley. "I can prove it. I have recordings, financial documents." Adriano moved like lightning, his fist connecting with Derek's jaw before any agent could intervene. Derek went down hard, blood streaming from his split lip. 3 agents immediately grabbed Adriano, forcing him against the wall, but he didn't resist. He threatened my pregnant fiancé, Adriano said calmly. Self-defense. Morrison looked between Derek, unconscious on the floor, and Adriano, controlled and steady. She sighed. Get Holloway out of here. Medical attention, then suspension protocols. She met Adriano's eyes. Mr. Bianchi, I strongly suggest you don't leave the state while we sort this mess out. I wasn't planning on it, Adriano replied smoothly. I have a wedding to plan. The agents withdrew like a tide, carrying Derek's unconscious form with them. Within minutes, the ballroom was empty, except for Adriano's people and the traumatized guests who'd witnessed everything. Hadley's legs gave out. Adriano caught her before she hit the ground, his arms strong and steady. I've got you, cara mia. The baby! Panic flooded her system. Adrenaline crash, hitting hard. Is fine. You're fine. Breathe. His hand pressed against her belly, feeling for movement. The baby kicked against his palm, strong and reassuring. Relief washed over his face. See? Our little fighter is perfect. Hadley's hands shook as reality set in. She'd just faced down a federal raid, invalidated multiple warrants, and watched her ex-boyfriend's career implode, all while 5 months pregnant. The magnitude of what could have gone wrong threatened to overwhelm her. Hey, look at me. Adriano tilted her chin up, his dark eyes fierce with pride and love. You just took down an entire FBI operation with nothing but your brain and your courage. You protected our family. You're extraordinary. I'm terrified, she whispered. I know, but you didn't let them see it. He kissed her forehead. That's what makes you dangerous to Sorrow. You're brilliant when you're scared. Rocco approached, his expression grim. Boss, we need to talk about security protocols. This was too close. Later, Adriano said. Right now, I'm taking my fiancée upstairs. She needs rest. But before they could move, Hadley's phone buzzed. She pulled it from her clutch with trembling hands, read the message, and felt ice flood her veins. What is it? Adriano demanded. Hadley showed him the screen. A text from an unknown number. Derek wasn't the only one watching you. Congratulations on the baby. It would be a shame if something happened before the wedding. Adriano's expression went from concern to lethal in half a heartbeat. He took Hadley's phone, examined the message, then crushed it in his hand like paper. Rocco, full lockdown, now. Within seconds, the ballroom transformed into a fortress. Adriano's men secured every entrance, while others escorted confused guests through a single controlled exit. No one complained. The FBI raid had already shattered any illusion of normalcy, and most of these people understood the world they'd entered by accepting an invitation to an Adriano Bianchi event. Hadley let Adriano guide her to a private study off the main hall, but her mind was racing. The message wasn't random. Someone had waited until after the FBI raid to make contact, which meant they'd been watching the entire operation unfold. They knew Derek had failed. They knew Hadley had dismantled the warrants, and they knew about the baby. Sit, Adriano commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. He poured her water from a crystal decanter, checked the seal on the bottle first. Paranoia that Hadley now understood was justified. Drink, then we talk. She obeyed, her hands still shaking slightly. The baby kicked again, and she focused on that sensation, the reminder that she was carrying a life that depended on her staying sharp, staying alive. Who else knew about the engagement party? Hadley asked. Besides your people and the guests? The planning company, catering, security vendors, all vetted. Adriano paced like a caged predator. But if the FBI could infiltrate the catering company, someone else could have done the same. No. Hadley shook her head. This isn't about infiltration. The message came after the raid failed. Whoever sent it wanted us to know they're separate from Derek's operation. She looked up at him. They wanted us to know they're better than the FBI. Adriano stopped pacing. A rival family, or someone inside your organization. The words hung between them like poison. Adriano had built his empire on loyalty, enforced by fear and respect in equal measure. The idea that someone in his inner circle would betray him, especially now with Hadley pregnant and vulnerable, made his expression turn cold enough to kill. If there's a traitor, I'll find them, he said quietly, and I'll make an example that ensures no one ever considers betrayal again. Hadley stood, ignoring the protest from her exhausted body. We don't have time for revenge. We need to figure out who sent that message and what they want. They want leverage. They want us afraid. Then we can't give them that. Hadley moved to the study's desk, opened her laptop, one of 3 she kept with different security protocols, and began typing. Derek's raid wasn't random timing. Someone tipped him off that tonight was the perfect opportunity. You think the same person sent the message? No, I think someone is playing multiple sides against each other. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, accessing encrypted files that contained everything she'd learned about Adriano's business in the past year. Derek wanted to arrest you. The FBI wanted a big public win. But whoever sent this message wanted something else. They wanted chaos. Adriano leaned over her shoulder, watching her work. What are you looking for? Patterns. Your enemies don't operate in isolation. They have motivations, resources, timing windows. She pulled up a timeline of recent threats, territorial disputes, and business conflicts. Someone benefits from you being distracted right now. Who? The Constantino family has been pushing into our territory in Providence. The Yakamura syndicate wants our shipping contracts. 3 independent operators have tried to undercut our loan operations in the past month. Adriano's jaw tightened. Take your pick. Hadley studied the timeline, her analytical mind sorting through possibilities. Then she saw it, a pattern so subtle she'd almost missed it. All of those conflicts started 6 weeks ago, she said slowly. Right after we announced the pregnancy. Adriano went very still. You think someone is targeting you specifically? I think someone sees me as your weakness. They've been probing defenses, testing responses, building a profile of how you react when I'm threatened. She turned to face him. The engagement party wasn't the target. It was reconnaissance. They wanted to see how we'd handle a federal raid, how your security would respond, how I'd react under pressure. And now they know you're not a weakness. Adriano's voice held grim pride. You're an asset, which makes you even more valuable as a target. Before Hadley could respond, Rocco entered without knocking, a breach of protocol that meant emergency. Boss, we've got a problem. The surveillance footage from tonight was wiped. All cameras, all backups. The same time the FBI cut the power. That's impossible, Adriano said. Our system has redundant power supplies. Someone disabled them from inside the security room. Rocco's expression was granite. Whoever did it had access codes and timing that only 5 people in this organization possess. The implication landed like a bomb. Adriano's inner circle, the men he trusted with his life, with Hadley's life, with their unborn child, had been compromised. Who was in the security room tonight? Hadley asked. Marco Tesoro and Vincent Gallo, both been with the family for over a decade. Rocco's voice was carefully neutral. Both passed extensive background checks. Both have proven loyalty. Where are they now? Marco's coordinating the guest exit. Vincent is running perimeter sweeps. Adriano's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his expression darkened further. Vincent just sent a message. Says he found something in the garden, evidence of additional surveillance equipment the FBI didn't place. Hadley's instincts screamed warning. Don't go. I have to verify. It's a trap. She grabbed his arm. Think about it. The security footage is wiped. Someone inside helped. And now Vincent conveniently finds evidence that requires you to leave the secure area? It's too perfect. Adriano looked at Rocco. Where exactly did Vincent say he found this equipment? East Garden, near the fountain. That's inside the secondary perimeter, Adriano said slowly. We swept that area 3 times before the party. If there was surveillance equipment there, we would have found it. Unless someone placed it after the sweeps. Unless someone wanted Adriano isolated and distracted. Rocco, bring Vincent here, Adriano ordered. Quietly. Don't alert anyone else. As Rocco left, Hadley's mind continued working through scenarios. If Vincent was the traitor, he'd be ready for confrontation. If he wasn't, then Marco was the threat, or someone else entirely. The uncertainty was suffocating. We need to leave, Hadley said suddenly. Tonight, before whoever's behind this makes their real move. I don't run. I'm not asking you to run. I'm asking you to be smart. She placed his hand on her belly, where their baby continued to kick with surprising strength. This isn't just about you anymore. Someone threatened our child, Adriano. Someone who knew exactly when and how to make us vulnerable. His hand tightened protectively over her stomach. She saw the war in his eyes, between the man who'd built an empire on never backing down and the father who would die before letting harm reach his family. We go to the safe house in Connecticut, he decided. Just until we identify the threat and neutralize it. No, Adriano blinked. No? Hadley's expression hardened into something that reminded him exactly why he'd fallen in love with her. We don't hide. We set a trap of our own. She pulled up a new file on her laptop. Emergency protocols she'd designed months ago. Contingencies Adriano didn't even know existed. Whoever is coming for us expects us to be afraid. Expects us to make mistakes. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we give them exactly what they want. Her smile was sharp enough to cut. They want to see me as your weakness? Then let's make them believe it. Let's make them overconfident. And when they strike, we destroy them. The baby kicked hard, as if approving the plan. Hadley laughed despite everything, despite the danger and the fear and the exhaustion. Our daughter has excellent timing. Daughter. Adriano's expression softened. You know? I had the doctor tell me last week. I was going to surprise you tonight before... She gestured vaguely at the chaos their engagement party had become. Adriano knelt in front of her, his hands cradling her belly with a gentleness that contradicted every violent thing he was capable of. A daughter, he whispered. We're having a daughter. And no one, not Derek, not the FBI, not whoever sent that message, is going to stop us from giving her the life she deserves. Hadley's voice was steel wrapped in silk. So here's what we're going to do. She laid out her plan with the precision of a surgeon, and Adriano listened with the focus of a general. By the time she finished, his smile matched hers, dangerous, determined, and absolutely lethal. You're terrifying when you're pregnant, he said, with genuine admiration. Good, Hadley replied. Let's make sure everyone else realizes it too. Hadley's plan was simple: make herself the bait. She spent the next 48 hours playing the role of terrified pregnant fiancé perfectly. She stayed visible, shopping at her favorite boutiques with minimal security, attending prenatal appointments at the same clinic she'd used for months, even posting carefully curated photos on social media showing her recovering from the traumatic FBI raid. Every move was calculated to send one message. Hadley Thorne was vulnerable and predictable. Adriano hated every second of it. You're 3 cars back, aren't you? Hadley said into her phone as she browsed baby clothes at an upscale boutique in downtown Boston. Her tone was light, teasing, but she could hear the tension in Adriano's breathing. 4 cars, Rocco insisted. His voice was tight. I don't like this, Tesoro. I know, but we need whoever's watching to believe I'm an easy target. She held up a tiny pink dress, her heart clenching at the thought of their daughter wearing it. Besides, I'm not actually alone. Your people are everywhere. They won't be fast enough if something goes wrong. Then it's good I know how to take care of myself. She'd spent the past year training with Adriano's best security specialists. Hand-to-hand combat adapted for her changing body, tactical awareness, emergency protocols. Being pregnant didn't make her helpless. It made her more dangerous because she had more to protect. The boutique clerk approached with a warm smile. Can I help you find anything specific? Just browsing, thank you. Hadley returned the smile, but her trained eye cataloged everything. The clerk's nervous energy, the way she kept glancing toward the back room, the slight bulge under her cardigan that could be a weapon or just an unfortunate fit. Paranoia or survival instinct? Lately, Hadley couldn't tell the difference. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Pink is a lovely choice. She'll look beautiful in it. Hadley's blood turned to ice. She showed the clerk her phone with steady hands. Did you send this? Begitu isa. Woman's confusion was genuine. Send what? I don't have your number. Which meant someone was watching right now. Inside the store or outside. Close enough to see which dress she'd touched. Hadley pressed the panic button disguised as a bracelet charm. Within 90 seconds, Adriano burst through the boutique entrance with 4 armed men, his expression lethal. The few other customers scattered like frightened birds. Show me, he commanded. Hadley handed him the phone. His jaw tightened as he read the message. Then he was barking orders. Rocco, lock down this block. I want every camera feed, every security system. Every person within visual range identified in the next 10 minutes. But Hadley was already moving toward the boutique's back room. The text came 40 seconds ago. They're either still here or just left. The clerk backed away nervously. I don't know what's happening. Back entrance, Hadley interrupted. Where is it? Through the storage room, but it's employee only. Hadley pushed through the door, Adriano right behind her. The storage room was chaos, boxes stacked haphazardly, clothing racks blocking the narrow path. The rear exit hung open, letting in cold November air. On the ground beside the door lay a phone, not a burner, an expensive smartphone with a single app open. A live camera feed showing the boutique's interior from across the street. They were watching from the building opposite, Adriano said, already on his phone coordinating pursuit. 4th floor, corner window. But Hadley knew they'd find nothing. Whoever was doing this was too careful, too prepared. They'd planned every move, anticipated every response. She picked up the abandoned phone and her blood froze. The screen changed, no longer showing the boutique feed. Now it displayed a video, a recording from inside Hadley's own home, her bedroom, the nursery they'd just started decorating. And sitting in the center of the unfinished nursery was a man she recognized from Adriano's files, Marco Tesaro, Adriano's security specialist, one of his most trusted men. Hello, Hadley, Marco said to the camera, his expression calm and almost apologetic. I imagine you're surprised. Everyone always is when they discover the truth, that the person they trusted most was the threat all along. Adriano grabbed the phone, his face draining of color. Marco, that's impossible. He's been with my family since before you took over operations from your uncle, Marco continued in the video. Since I was placed here by people who understood that patience is more valuable than immediate action. 15 years, Adriano. 15 years of loyalty, of service, of access to everything you hold dear. The camera panned to show photographs covering the nursery walls, surveillance photos of Hadley and Adriano over the past year. Their first date, the night Adriano proposed, medical appointments, private moments stolen in what they thought were secure locations. Their entire relationship had been documented. You're probably wondering what I want, Marco said. It's simple. Adriano Bianchi owes a debt. One his uncle promised before he died. One that Adriano has refused to honor. So now the debt comes due with interest. His smile was cold. You have 72 hours to deliver 10 million in bearer bonds and complete control of your Providence territory. If you refuse, or if you involve law enforcement, Hadley and your daughter will disappear. You'll spend the rest of your life wondering if they're alive or dead, wondering if you'll ever see them again. The video ended. Hadley felt Adriano's hand tighten around the phone, heard the crack as the screen fractured under pressure. His rage was incandescent, a cold, controlled fury that made even his own men step back. He was in our home, Adriano said quietly, in our nursery, taking pictures of where our daughter will sleep. We need to think strategically, Hadley managed, though her own fear threatened to overwhelm her analytical mind. If Marco's been undercover for 15 years, he knows all your protocols, all your safe houses, all your... everything. Adriano's voice was hollow. He knows everything. And in that moment, Hadley realized the true scope of their trap. The FBI raid hadn't been the real threat. It had been a distraction. Derek's obsessive pursuit had created the perfect cover for someone patient enough to wait years for the right moment. Now, with Hadley pregnant and vulnerable, with Adriano's attention divided, Marco was making his move, and he held every advantage. We can't meet his demands, Hadley said. If we give him what he wants, it won't matter. Adriano's expression was bleak. Men like Marco don't leave witnesses. Even if we pay, even if we surrender territory, he'll still come for you, for our daughter. He met her eyes, because the real debt isn't money or power, it's revenge. The safe house in Connecticut felt like a cage. Hadley paced the reinforced living room, one hand pressed against her belly where their daughter kicked restlessly, as if sensing her mother's fear. Outside, a dozen armed guards patrolled the perimeter. Inside, Adriano coordinated with his remaining trusted lieutenants, trying to determine how deep Marco's betrayal ran. 3 days had passed since Marco's video. 72 hours had become 48, then 24. Now they had less than 6 hours before the deadline, and they were no closer to finding him. We should involve the FBI, Hadley said for the third time. Derek might be suspended, but SAC Morrison seemed reasonable. No, Adriano's voice was final. The moment federal agents get involved, Marco disappears, and we lose any chance of stopping him. And if we don't involve them, we're fighting blind against a man who knows every move we'll make before we make it. Hadley's voice rose with frustration and terror. He's been inside your organization for 15 years, Adriano. He probably has contingency plans for his contingency plans. I know. The admission seemed to cost him. Adriano looked older than she'd ever seen him, exhausted, afraid, stripped of the confident control that defined him. I trusted him. I brought him into our home. I let him near you, near our baby. Stop. Hadley crossed to him, took his face in her hands. This isn't about guilt. It's about survival. We need to think like he does. Anticipate his next move. His next move is obvious. If we don't deliver the bonds and territory by midnight, he takes you. The words hung heavy between them. Hadley had spent the past 3 days analyzing every angle, every possibility. Marco had been patient enough to wait 15 years. He wouldn't act impulsively now. He had a plan, and that plan required her alive, at least initially, which meant she had leverage if she was brave enough to use it. Then we give him what he wants, Hadley said quietly. Adriano pulled back. Absolutely not. We're not negotiating. We're setting a trap. She moved to the laptop they'd been using for secure communications. Marco knows your playbook, but he doesn't know mine. He's been watching you for 15 years, but he's only known me for 1. That's our advantage. What are you suggesting? Hadley pulled up the encrypted files she'd been building since the engagement party disaster, contingency plans she'd designed without Adriano's knowledge, because she'd learned long ago that the only person she could truly rely on was herself. I'm suggesting I meet with Marco, alone, deliver the bonds personally. That's insane. It's logical. Her voice was steel. He wants leverage over you, which means he needs me alive and controlled. If I come willingly, if I appear cooperative, he'll be confident enough to make mistakes. And if he isn't, if he just takes you and disappears. Adriano's hands shook, the first time she'd ever seen him lose physical control. I can't lose you, Hadley. I can't lose either of you. You won't. She took his hands, pressed them against her belly where their daughter kicked strong and determined. Because I'm not the naive woman Derek thought he was dating, and I'm not the trophy wife Marco thinks you married. I'm the person who's been running your financial empire, restructuring your entire network, making you untouchable. That's exactly why this is dangerous. If Marco realizes how valuable you are, he already knows. That's why he's targeting me specifically. Hadley's mind raced through probabilities, through tactical scenarios. But what he doesn't know is that I've been preparing for this exact situation since the moment we announced the pregnancy. I knew being with you made me a target, so I took precautions. She opened a hidden file, showed Adriano documentation he'd never seen, offshore accounts in her name, emergency contacts with private security firms, even a separate communications network that bypassed his entire organization. You built a shadow operation, Adriano said slowly, caught between admiration and hurt. Without telling me, I built an insurance policy, because I love you, but I also know your world doesn't forgive weakness. She met his eyes. And pregnancy makes everyone assume I'm weak. Marco's counting on it. Derek counted on it. They're all wrong. Before Adriano could respond, Rocco burst into the room, his expression grim. Boss, we've got a problem. Vincent never came back from his perimeter check. We found his radio destroyed, and he hesitated. We found a message carved into a tree. Says, time's up. Come alone or she hunts you. Hadley's heart stopped. Vincent had been loyal, careful, professional. If Marco had gotten to him inside their most secure location, then nowhere was safe. He's here, she whispered. Marco's already inside the perimeter. The lights went out. Emergency protocols kicked in immediately. Backup generators, lockdown procedures, armed response. But in the 3 seconds of darkness, Hadley heard it. Footsteps above them, moving through the safe house's second floor. Footsteps that shouldn't exist because the upper level was supposed to be empty. Adriano pulled her behind him, weapon drawn. Rocco called for backup on his radio, but got only static in response. Their communications were jammed. "Bedroom," Adriano commanded, pushing Hadley toward the reinforced panic room hidden behind a false wall. "Now!" But before they could move, the living room's main entrance exploded inward, not with force, but with precision. Someone had disabled the locks electronically, bypassing every security measure. Marco Tessero stepped through the doorway, flanked by 4 men Hadley didn't recognize. Not Adriano's people, mercenaries, professional and cold. "Hello, old friend," Marco said calmly, his weapon pointed at Adriano's chest. "I'm afraid I'm going to have to accelerate our timeline. You see, your lovely fiancé is more resourceful than I anticipated." He smiled at Hadley. "Those shadow accounts you created. Found them this morning. Very impressive. Which means you're even more valuable than I initially calculated." Hadley's hand instinctively covered her belly, her mind racing through options. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped in a location Marco had clearly compromised hours or even days ago. "Let her go," Adriano said quietly. "This is between us. She's the most important part." Marco's expression hardened. "The debt your uncle owed. It wasn't money or territory. It was blood. He killed someone important to my employers, and they've waited 15 years for appropriate retribution. Your death would be sufficient, except now you've given them something better. A legacy to destroy, a future to prevent." Understanding crashed over Hadley like ice water. "You're going to kill our daughter. Eventually. First, I'm going to make Adriano watch as I erase everything he loves, everything he built, everything he hoped for." Marco's smile was gentle, almost apologetic. Nothing personal, just business. The baby kicked, hard, desperate, as if fighting for survival from inside Hadley's womb, and something in Hadley snapped. Not her control, but her restraint. She'd spent her entire life being underestimated, playing roles, pretending to be less dangerous than she was. But now, with her daughter's life at stake, pretense became impossible. "You made one mistake," Hadley said softly. Marco's eyes narrowed. "What's that?" "You told me your plan." Her hand moved to the bracelet on her wrist, not the panic button Adriano knew about, but something else entirely. "Which means I know exactly how to stop you." She pressed the hidden switch, and the world exploded into chaos. Flashbang grenades Hadley had personally planted throughout the safe house detonated simultaneously, filling every room with blinding light and deafening noise. She'd spent weeks memorizing the layout, calculating blast radiuses, ensuring the devices would disorient but not harm. Marco and his mercenaries dropped, hands covering ears and eyes. 3 seconds of advantage. That's all Hadley needed. She grabbed Adriano's arm, pulled him toward the kitchen where she'd hidden tactical gear behind a false panel. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency despite her pregnant belly, pulling out body armor modified for her changing shape, weapons she'd calibrated herself, communications equipment linked to her shadow network. "When did you?" Adriano started, stunned. 3 months ago, I knew someone would eventually come for us." She tossed him a vest, activated her encrypted radio. "Alpha Team, this is Nightingale. Execute Protocol 7. The response came immediately, not from Adriano's people, but from the private security firm Hadley had contracted independently. "Copy, Nightingale. Inbound in 90 seconds. Adriano stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "You hired backup without telling me." "I hired insurance." Hadley chambered around in her weapon, movement smooth despite her racing heart. "Because I knew if someone ever got this close, your pride wouldn't let you ask for outside help. So I asked for you." In the living room, Marco was recovering, shouting orders to his men, but Hadley's flashbangs had bought precious time, and she intended to use every second. "We need to separate them," she said, her tactical mind overriding fear. "Marco knows your fighting style, but he doesn't know mine. Rocco, where are you?" Pinned down in the east corridor, Rocco's voice crackled through Adriano's radio. "2 hostiles between me and you. Copy, I'm coming to you. Hadley moved before Adriano could stop her, using the kitchen's secondary exit that led to the corridor. Her pregnancy made her slower, but years of training with modified movements meant she wasn't helpless. She cleared the corner, found Rocco exchanging fire with two of Marco's mercenaries. One shot, center mass, and the first mercenary dropped. The second turned toward her, and Hadley put 2 rounds in his chest before he could acquire his target. Rocco stared. Boss lady, you've been holding out on us. I prefer to keep some skills private. She helped him up. How many more? Marco, +2, last I counted. But he's got the place wired. I saw demolition charges when they breached, which meant Marco's endgame was worse than kidnapping. If he couldn't take Hadley, he'd destroy everyone in the building. No witnesses, no trail, just a tragic accident that eliminated Adriano Bianchi and his pregnant fiancée. Hadley's radio crackled. Nightingale, Alpha Team is 30 seconds out. Be advised, we're detecting explosive devices throughout the structure. Copy that. Stand by for extraction. She turned to Rocco. Get Adriano to the north exit. My people will cover your escape. I'm not leaving you. Adriano's voice came from behind her. He'd followed despite her orders, his expression torn between fury and admiration. You have to. If Marco detonates those charges with both of us inside, our daughter dies. Hadley's voice was steady, but her hand found his. I need you to trust me. Trust that I know what I'm doing. You're asking me to abandon you. I'm asking you to protect our family. She pressed something into his hand, a USB drive. Everything you need to dismantle Marco's network, identify his employers, and destroy everyone who threatened us. I've been building the case for months, but it only matters if you survive to use it. Adriano looked at the drive, then at her belly where their daughter continued to kick with stubborn determination. The choice was impossible. Leave the woman he loved to face a killer alone, or risk their child's future on pride. I'll come back for you, he said finally. I know. She kissed him hard, pouring every ounce of love and fear into that moment. Now go. Rocco pulled Adriano toward the north exit just as Hadley's security team breached the south entrance. Professional operators in tactical gear moved through the building with lethal efficiency, engaging Marco's remaining mercenaries. Hadley stayed in the corridor, her weapon trained on the living room entrance. She knew Marco would come for her. His entire operation hinged on using her as leverage. He couldn't let her escape. Quite the performance, Marco's voice called from the shadows. I underestimated you, Hadley. That was foolish. Yes, it was. She tracked his movement by sound, compensating for the ringing in her ears from the flashbangs. But you made a bigger mistake. You threatened my daughter. And you love her more than you fear me. How maternal. Marco stepped into view, his weapon lowered but ready. But love doesn't stop bullets, and your armor won't protect that baby bump. He was right. Hadley's modified body armor protected her torso, but her pregnant belly remained vulnerable. One well-placed shot, and she'd lose everything. You're going to let me walk out of here, Marco continued. Because if you don't, I detonate the charges and everyone dies, including the man you love and the child you're carrying. Hadley's mind calculated angles, probabilities, risks. Marco held the detonator. She could see it in his left hand. Her security team was still engaged with his mercenaries. Adriano was hopefully clear of the blast radius by now, which meant the only person in immediate danger was her. You're bluffing, Hadley said calmly. If you detonate now, you die too. I've been ready to die for 15 years. Have you? The question hung in the air. Hadley thought of her daughter, the tiny life depending on her making the right choice. Thought of Adriano, who'd shown her what it meant to be loved completely. Thought of the future they'd planned, the family they'd hoped to build. She thought of all she had to lose, and then she thought of what her daughter would inherit if Hadley backed down now. A legacy of fear, of running, of letting men like Marco Tesoro dictate the terms of her survival. No, Hadley said softly, but I'm willing to risk it to protect my family. She fired. The shot took Marco in his right shoulder, not lethal, but enough to make him drop his weapon. The detonator fell from his left hand, and Hadley was moving before it hit the ground, her pregnant body slower, but her determination absolute. She kicked the detonator away, heard it skitter across hardwood floors into darkness. Marco lunged for her, his training overriding pain, but Hadley had trained with men twice his size while carrying 20 extra pounds. She pivoted, used his momentum against him, and brought her weapon up under his chin. "Don't move," she commanded. Marco froze, blood seeping through his shirt. His eyes held grudging respect. "You should have gone for the kill shot. I need you alive to testify against whoever hired you." Hadley's voice was ice. "And to spend the rest of your life knowing you failed." Her security team flooded the corridor, weapons trained on Marco. The team leader, a woman named Sarah Chen, who Hadley had personally vetted, approached with zip ties. "Subject secure," Sarah reported. "Sweeping for additional hostiles and locating the detonator." "Northeast corner, under the side table," Hadley said, her perfect recall mapping the sound of the detonator's trajectory. "And someone check on the extraction team. Make sure Adriano Bianchi made it clear." "Already confirmed. He's secure with your secondary team." Sarah zip-tied Marco with efficient brutality. Impressive shooting, by the way. Most people can't maintain accuracy under stress, especially. She gestured at Hadley's belly. Most people aren't protecting their daughter. Hadley lowered her weapon, adrenaline beginning to fade and exhaustion flooding in. The baby kicked frantically, and Hadley pressed her hand against her stomach. "It's okay, sweet girl. We're safe now." Marco laughed, bitter and defeated. "You think this is over? The people I work for don't accept failure. They'll send someone else, someone better." "No, they won't." Adriano's voice cut through the chaos. He appeared in the corridor, flanked by Rocco and 3 more armed men. His eyes found Hadley first, scanning her for injuries, seeing her standing and whole, and relief crashed over his features. Then his gaze shifted to Marco, and that relief transformed into cold fury. "Because I know who hired you," Adriano continued, crossing to stand beside Hadley. "Salvatore Constantino, my uncle's old rival, the man who's been trying to take my territory for 15 years. He held up the USB drive Hadley had given him. And thanks to my brilliant fiancé, I now have documentation of every payment, every communication, every move Constantino made to place you inside my organization." Marco's face went pale. "You can't prove, I can prove everything." Hadley's voice was steady. "I've been tracking anomalies in Adriano's finances for months. Payments that didn't match legitimate operations, communications routed through encrypted channels I couldn't access. I knew someone was embedded. I just couldn't identify who until you revealed yourself." She smiled without warmth. "Thank you for that, by the way. You made my investigation much easier. The moment we deliver this evidence to Constantino's competitors, he's finished," Adriano added. "They'll tear his organization apart themselves. No federal investigation needed. No public trials, just old-fashioned mob justice." "And you," Hadley said to Marco, "get to watch while everything you worked for collapses. Then you'll spend the rest of your life in a federal prison, because we're also giving SAC Morrison enough evidence to prosecute you for attempted murder, conspiracy, and about 15 other charges." Marco's expression crumbled. 15 years of planning, of patience, of sacrifice, all destroyed in one night because he'd underestimated a pregnant woman. Sarah's radio crackled. "Detonator secured. Bomb squad is clearing the devices now. Estimate 30 minutes until the scene is safe." "Copy," Hadley acknowledged. She looked at Adriano. "We should evacuate until—" Pain lanced through her abdomen, sharp, sudden, terrifying. Hadley gasped, doubling over, and Adriano caught her before she fell. "What's wrong? The baby?" "I don't know." Panic edged into Hadley's voice. "Something's wrong. It hurts." "Get the medic," Adriano shouted. "Now." One of Hadley's security team rushed forward. A former paramedic named James, who'd been part of her contingency planning. He ran quick assessments while Adriano held Hadley's hand tight enough to hurt. "Possible placental abruption from the stress," James said grimly. "We need to get her to a hospital immediately. If we don't—" He didn't need to finish. Everyone understood the stakes. "There's a helicopter inbound," Sarah said, already coordinating. "ETA 3 minutes. We'll have you at Boston General in 15. Adriano lifted Hadley despite her protests, carrying her toward the safe house's helipad. "Stay with me, cara mia. Stay with me and our daughter." I'm not going anywhere, Hadley managed through gritted teeth, though fear clawed at her chest. She'd survived FBI raids and firefights, outsmarted federal agents and mob enforcers. But this, the possibility of losing her daughter after fighting so hard to protect her, was a terror unlike anything she'd ever known. The helicopter materialized from the darkness, rotors creating hurricane winds. Adriano secured Hadley inside, while James continued monitoring her vitals, his expression professionally neutral, but his eyes worried. As they lifted off, Hadley looked down at the safe house, at Marco being loaded into an unmarked vehicle, at her security team coordinating with local law enforcement, at Rocco and Adriano's remaining loyal men securing the perimeter. She'd won. They'd won. Marco was captured, Constantino would be destroyed, and their enemies would think twice before targeting the Bianchi family again. But none of it mattered if she lost her daughter. "Talk to me," Adriano demanded as the helicopter raced through the night. "What are you feeling? Pain, fear, anger that after everything we survived tonight, my own body might betray me." Hadley's hand found her belly. "But also hope, because she's still kicking, she's still fighting. Like her mother," Adriano said softly, "like both her parents." Hadley managed a smile. "We're going to be okay. We have to be." The helicopter touched down at Boston General's Trauma Center 12 minutes later. A medical team rushed Hadley into emergency surgery, while Adriano was forced to wait outside, helpless and terrified. Rocco arrived 30 minutes later, found his boss pacing the surgical waiting room like a caged animal. "Marco's in federal custody," Rocco reported. "Morrison took possession personally. Said to tell you she appreciates the gift-wrapped case and hopes Hadley recovers quickly." He paused. "Also said Derek Holloway has been permanently reassigned to the Anchorage field office. Something about needing to cool off in Alaska." Adriano barely registered the words. His entire focus was on the surgical suite doors, waiting for news that would determine whether his future held joy or devastating loss. When the doors finally opened 3 hours later, the surgeon's expression was carefully neutral. "Mr. Bianchi," Adriano's heart stopped. "My fiancé, my daughter, are they?" The surgeon smiled. "They're both fine. The stress caused some minor complications, but we've stabilized everything. Hadley will need bed rest for the remainder of her pregnancy, but both mother and baby are healthy and strong." Relief hit Adriano so hard he had to sit down. "Can I see them?" "She's asking for you." Adriano found Hadley in a private recovery room, monitors beeping steadily, her hand resting protectively over her belly. She looked exhausted and beautiful and absolutely fierce. "Hey," she said softly. "We made it." "You made it." Adriano took her hand, brought it to his lips. "You saved us all." "We saved each other." Hadley's smile was genuine now, warm and full of hope. That's what family does. 3 months later, Hadley stood in the nursery, the same room where Marco had placed his surveillance equipment, now completely redecorated and cleansed of every bad memory. Soft afternoon light filtered through curtains as she rocked their daughter, Isabella Rose Bianchi, who'd been born 6 weeks earlier at a healthy 7 pounds. "She has your eyes," Adriano said from the doorway, his voice soft with wonder. Even after 6 weeks, he still looked at their daughter like she was a miracle he couldn't quite believe was real. "And your stubborn determination," Hadley smiled as Isabella gripped her finger with surprising strength. "She kept me up half the night demanding attention. She knows what she wants." Like her mother, Adriano crossed to them, wrapped his arms around both his girls. "SAC Morrison called this morning. Marco pleaded guilty to all charges. He'll spend the next 40 years in federal prison. And Constantino was found dead in his home last night. Apparent suicide." Hadley raised an eyebrow. "Apparent?" His competitors were thorough about sending a message. No one threatens the Bianchi family without consequences. Adriano's expression hardened briefly, then softened as he looked at Isabella. "But that's not our concern anymore. That world, I'm stepping back from the dangerous parts. Rocco's taking over active operations while I focus on the legitimate businesses." Really, Hadley was genuinely surprised. Adriano had built his identity around control and power. Stepping back wasn't something she'd expected. "I'm not willing to risk being absent from her life." He touched Isabella's tiny hand. "Or yours." You both deserve a father and husband who comes home at night, who doesn't carry the constant threat of violence. He met Hadley's eyes. You deserve the life you fought so hard to protect. Tears pricked Hadley's eyes, pregnancy hormones still making her emotional even weeks after delivery. We'll figure it out together, like we always do. The doorbell rang downstairs, and moments later, Rocco appeared with a package. Delivery for you, boss lady. No return address, but it cleared all security scans. Hadley handed Isabella to Adriano, opened the package carefully. Inside was a single item. Her old phone, the one Derek had used during their relationship years ago. And a note in Derek's handwriting. I was wrong about you. You were never the victim I thought I was rescuing. I'm sorry for everything, for lying, for the raid, for not seeing who you really were. You and Bianchi deserve each other. Congratulations on the baby, D. Hadley read the note twice, then handed it to Adriano. He finally understands. That you're dangerous when protecting your family. Everyone understands that now. Adriano's smile held pride and love. The engagement party incident is already legend in certain circles. How a pregnant woman dismantled an FBI operation and captured a deep-cover operative in the same week. I'd rather be known as Isabella's mother than some criminal legend. Hadley took their daughter back, breathed in that perfect newborn smell. Speaking of which, when are we actually getting married? We've been engaged for 4 months. Whenever you want. Though I was thinking something small this time, maybe just us, Isabella, and a judge. No guest lists. No catering companies that might be fronts for federal operations. Hadley laughed. Sounds perfect. Though your mother will be disappointed we're not doing a big Italian wedding. My mother will be thrilled we're finally making it official. She's been calling daily, asking when she can throw a christening party for Isabella. Next month. After I'm fully recovered and after we've finished installing the new security system. Hadley's experience had made her even more cautious about protecting their family. The nursery alone now had more security features than most government buildings. They spent the afternoon in comfortable silence, taking turns holding Isabella, planning their simple courthouse wedding, discussing the legitimate business ventures Adriano was expanding. The life they were building looked nothing like the one Hadley had imagined years ago, but it was real, honest, and entirely theirs. As evening fell, Hadley stood at the nursery window, watching the sunset over Boston. Isabella slept peacefully in her arms, and Adriano's hand rested on her shoulder, solid, protective, present. She thought about everything they'd survived: betrayal, violence, federal raids, assassination attempts. Thought about the terrified girl who'd trusted the wrong man years ago, and the woman she'd become through necessity and determination. Thank you, Adriano said quietly. For what? For being strong enough to protect our family when I couldn't. For seeing threats I missed, for being my equal instead of just my partner. He kissed her temple. For choosing this life, even knowing how dangerous it would be. I didn't choose the danger, Hadley corrected. I chose you. The danger just came with the package. She smiled. Besides, what's life without a little excitement? I think we've had enough excitement for one lifetime. Probably, but knowing our luck, something else will come up eventually. Hadley looked down at Isabella's peaceful face. And when it does, we'll handle it together. Together, Adriano agreed. As darkness settled over the city, Hadley felt truly safe for the first time in months. Not because the threats were gone, there would always be threats in their world, but because she'd proven to herself, to Adriano, and to everyone who'd underestimated her that she was capable of protecting what mattered most. Her family, her daughter, her future. And anyone foolish enough to threaten them would learn the same lesson Marco and Derek had learned. Hadley Thorne Bianchi wasn't a weakness to exploit. She was a force to be reckoned with. Isabella stirred in her arms, made a small sound of contentment, and settled back into sleep. Hadley's heart swelled with love so fierce it was almost painful. This moment of peace, of family, of hard-won happiness was everything she'd fought for. And she'd do it all again in a heartbeat. We're pushing to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your support to keep bringing you these intense stories. Hit subscribe and let me keep you company with a new story every day.